We're joined now by the relatively new CEO of the company, Peter Kukielski. Of course, he's been around for a while. He was, for a while, CEO of Nevsun Resources, which was sold last year. Peter, it's great to see you.
Thank you very much.
So when were you, just remind us of your history with the company. When did you come into Hudbay?
I joined the Hudbay Board of Directors back in May after their AGM. And then in July, I was appointed as interim Chief Executive Officer. And then last week, they took the word interim away, and here I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So you're a mining engineer, and just remind us of your career to date.
Sure, I'm an engineer. I'm actually not a mining engineer.
Oh,
I'm a civil engineer.
You're civil, I'm sorry, okay, yeah.
Started my career in South Africa in the construction industry, actually. Although I had studied mining there for some time. In the United States, I went to work for Fluor, a big engineering and construction company, built projects all over the world, Indonesia, Peru, and then I joined Noranda, which became Falconbridge. I was Chief Operating Officer at Falconbridge. When Falconbridge was acquired by Xstrata, I joined Teck Resources as their Chief Operating Officer. After that, I spent 5 years with ArcelorMittal building a global mining business for them, and then some time with private equity before joining Nevsun.
Right, and then were you there at the time of the sale of Nevsun to the Chinese company?
I was indeed.
Yeah.
I was indeed.
Oh, okay. Okay, so is that why you were hired at Hudbay? Is that on the agenda to actually sell Hudbay Minerals?
No, absolutely not. In fact,
Okay.
I went to Nevsun to build the company. And as we were busy building the company, we came under, there was a takeover bid for the company, which of course after a strategic review resulted in the sale of the company. It was a bittersweet moment, but our shareholders did very well out of it.
Okay, so Hudbay obviously has had some rough sailing over the past year. The big disappointment was Rosemont in Arizona, legal setback. That darn thing could take now 2 years longer than people had hoped.
Look, I think, Rosemont was an unprecedented decision by a judge who, I believe, incorrectly applied regulations that didn't apply to the mining industry. But the most important thing to note is there's 25 odd mining companies and projects that would be impacted by this decision if it was not overturned at the circuit court. And so it's a major decision that has been made that I am pretty confident will be overturned on appeal, but yes, it'll take some time.
And there's another big mining project in Arizona called Phoenix. Remind us what that one is.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Phoenix.
No,
actually.
Okay, that's not on your radar. Okay, so you also, of course, have had setbacks at Constancia in Latin America, that big mine. There's been local opposition to proposals to expand that mine, and that has disappointed investors.
No, in fact, there's been no opposition to Constancia. So
I thought, well, the expansion, the land rights, has been an issue. Yeah.
And actually no opposition to them. So we have a very close relationship with the Chioroya community. It's just taken time to secure the surface rights. The relationship is very good. We are in discussions with the community of Chioroya. We're pretty confident that in the near future we'll reach agreement on surface rights, and we expect to be mining the Pampacancha deposit by the end of the year.
So why has there been a delay? So you're advancing discussions with the community of Chioroya on a land access agreement. So that has taken longer. So it sounds like opposition of some kind.
No, it's not so much opposition as the community was primarily interested in resolving some outstanding issues from the original agreement with respect to the Constancia mine. And before they wanted to negotiate on the Pampacancha deposit, they wanted to put those issues behind them. Those issues were all put behind us, I would say mid-year last year. And then in August, we embarked on negotiations for the Pampacancha surface rights, and I think that will be concluded quite shortly.
There were, of course, earlier protests blocking access to the port of Matarani,
yes,
which Constancia relied on. What was that all about?
That was in opposition to the award of a permit to the Tia Maria mine, which theoretically would also potentially utilize that port. The government subsequently withdrew the permit for re-evaluation, at which time the blockaders opened access again. The permit's subsequently been reinstated. However, there has not been civil action. The one thing that I would note, though, is that our relationships with the communities down the access route are pretty strong. And while we were unable to move inventories for a while, we have more than adequate space up at the mine to store inventories. And we, because of the relationship we have with the communities, we have actually never suffered an interruption at the Constancia operation.
It was just at the port.
It was just at the port, and it was not in opposition to us. It was a bit of a protest against another permit that was awarded by the government to another mine.
There was friction, though, I'm going back a while, though, over trucks and trucks leaking material, and that did involve your vehicles, I understand.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
You know, remember that that access route is used by the Las Bambas mine, by the Antapaccay mine, by us, and by Cerro Verde. So,
okay.
I mean, there are a lot of trucks that go down that road. On the other hand, the trucks are a source of income to the communities now, because the communities largely own those trucks. Okay. And rent them to the operators.
So if Rosemont's delayed, you do have firepower to buy an asset. You ended Q3 with about $400 million in cash, I believe, and just over $400 million in available credit. So would you be interested in a copper asset if it came along, an acquisition?
You know, you never say never, but our focus really is on sweating our assets and on low capital intensity growth around our existing operations in Manitoba and in Peru. That's the best thing that you can do with your money, is use your people locally and expand the assets that you have. And so, you know, in Peru we have some really incredible exploration tenements that are very, very close to Constancia that we want to explore. And in Manitoba we have the Lalor camp, which could be a gold mine in the future. It's a base metal mine today. There's a lot of work to be done there to unearth value. We need to build the new Britannia circuit so that we can actually exploit the gold side of it. So a lot of things that can be done within our asset base right now without embarking on M&A.
Right, and what about, I think we can put up a comparative for the stock. I mean, why has the stock come under such pressure? Is it just disappointment over Rosemont, do you think?
You know, Rosemont played a big part, there's no doubt about that. And you know, we wiped out a chunk of value in our equity, of course. There's another piece to it, and that's that Hudbay is probably the most highly correlated company to copper price in the industry. So when the copper price goes up or down, you typically see a disproportionate reaction in Hudbay's equity. And as you've seen recently, of course, copper has been taking a little bit of a hit.
Yes.
Mainly because of sentiment, but...
Yes, that's interesting. So your leverage to copper pretty high?
Very, very high.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the virus, I mean, obviously it's early days. It's very hard to know what impact this thing will have. SARS, the impact blew over reasonably quickly.
Yes. You know, and again, I think that the world is much better organized today. I do believe that the fundamentals for copper are very, very strong. So there is a limited supply, and yet there's really substantial demand moving ahead, especially with electrification that the world is looking for, and specifically green electrification, decarbonization, et cetera, and there's just not enough copper supply to meet that demand going forward. So I think, although we may suffer some short-term sentiment-driven drops in price, I believe the fundamentals ahead are actually very, very strong.
Peter, thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Peter Kukielski is the CEO of Hudbay Minerals.